for the majority of us, postpartum is a bitch. We're talking about postpartum today. Dr. Aliabadi is joining us. Postpartum was like this boogeyman out there until you experience it. It's like, if you know, you know.
So it's not just, oh, here's the baby, I'm gonna go home, it's gonna be fun. None of it is true.
I remember taking her home in the car seat and being like,
what do I do now? You're on your own.
you're good to go.
Just take that with you.
The worst part is that they expect moms to go back to work at 6 weeks. I think that's criminal.
You said it's a if you know, you know kind of club, but like, we want to know too.
Welcome to Broadlines.
A weekly video podcast where real headlines meet real conversations.
I'm Natalie Lizaraga.
And I'm Rae Williams.
And today we're talking about why postpartum affects everyone. I actually sat down with a board-certified OBGYN, Dr. Aliabadi, who's the co-host of the SheMD podcast. She's also the co-founder of OV. And we had an open conversation about everything postpartum, all the things you expect when you have a baby and all the things you don't. We're talking about postpartum today. It's a topic we all wanted to dive into. So, of course, Dr. Aliabadi is joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Postpartum is just this thing that's out there. And until you experience it, it's like, if you know, you know. So before going into it, to our listeners, can you describe to us what postpartum is when it comes to the physical side of it as well as the mental side?
Postpartum is a period of physical, emotional, hormonal, psychological recovery after childbirth. So it's not just, oh, here's the baby, I'm gonna go home, it's gonna be fun, I'm gonna have this little baby that I'm gonna play with. None of it is true. I know you just had a baby, so you know. And honestly, I had done thousands of deliveries before I had my first daughter. Until you have a child, you cannot I feel like we underestimate how much work it is to go home. I personally had a C-section, and I remember going home with this child, and I remember looking at her, and she was so beautiful, and I would look at her, I'm like, who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you here? I had such a disconnect with her. Even as an OBGYN, it took a minute to transition.
I think it's important because I, like you, it was like this boogeyman out there, like, I know something's going to happen to me. I know I'll have postpartum, whatever that means, but it wasn't something that was described to me on here's what to expect. What can women expect when it comes to their bodies changing and their moods and their hormones after they have a baby?
So first of all, postpartum is not 6 weeks, right? We always talk about 6 weeks postpartum because at 6 weeks, the wound heals. But that doesn't mean you've recovered. This period, in my opinion, is a year. It's 12 months, not 6 weeks. A lot of women, as you know, go through postpartum depression. It's this depression and anxiety and OCD and intrusive thoughts that doesn't go away and can last, for months postpartum. The lack of sleep is something, I'm an OBGYN, I'm always up and I've been up all the time. But waking up with a baby who's screaming all the time and you feel overwhelmed and your incision hurts or your vagina hurts and your nipples hurt.
Everything hurts.
Everything hurts.
The pain of the breast is so much. Another thing, you don't anticipate that it's going to be painful to get your milk just to begin with. I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions, and I love having you here to kind of dispel these myths. The 6 weeks one is a big one, that you're perfectly ready to go after 6 weeks. Another one that you kind of touched on already was this fact that you might not feel this amazing connection with your new child, and then you might feel guilty or it's conceived as you don't love your baby.
Absolutely. That's extremely common. And I feel like it's more common with the first pregnancy because once you're a mom, it's easier to bond. But with the first pregnancy, it's really rough. And breastfeeding, I remember I would pump and I would get red blood literally in the bottles. Instead of milk, I was collecting blood from my nipples. Wow. And I was crying, and my husband walked in and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I was so traumatized with all of it.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, he's like, don't do it for me. And as soon as he said that, I literally turned the pump off and pulled it out. And I was done with it. It was so difficult for me. And I think that's the biggest myth because you think you can just take a baby, put the baby on your breast, and all is good.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
I have almost the identical story of my husband seeing me crying, trying to latch I'm going to cry now, trying to latch this child, and him being like, enough. you've tried everything.
Yeah.
She's fed. I pumped for more than I wanted to. He's like, you're done.
If you can do it, all the power to you. It's so amazing, but it's really not for everyone.
Yeah. A lot of people get these confused. So I'd like to clarify and have you do this for us. Baby blues versus postpartum depression.
Almost 80% of women experience baby blues. It's the first 2 weeks postpartum. You feel teary-eyed, you feel depressed, you feel anxious, you're exhausted. You might have bonding issues with your baby, but it should resolve, right? By 6 weeks, you're good to go. With postpartum depression, it goes way beyond that 6 weeks. It's really an emergency and it needs to be dealt with. The problem is our healthcare system doesn't address this screening for postpartum depression. We've gotten better over the years, but I still don't think women understand it or even recognize it.
Especially for first-time moms, you're excited about having this baby. You get home and then you realize, whoa, this is an overwhelming experience, but you maybe aren't ready to admit that because it kind of feels like as a woman, like, I can't fail at this. I really want to do it.
I think the more we talk about it and the more we normalize it, the more women will talk about it. Patients with history of anxiety, depression, patients who had a history of PTSD, childhood trauma, or even trauma with delivery, right? Those patients are at a higher risk of developing postpartum depression. So you really, really want to screen them.
What do you think is the best advice to give people? Because we've experienced postpartum, people haven't, friends that don't have children or have decided not to. What's the way that they can truly support someone who's going through this?
Instead of sending a text and saying, let me know if I can do anything, why don't you bring me food? Why don't you just come to my house and say, you know what, I'm going to hold your baby for an hour, go get a massage. Go shower. I remember the first shower I had my baby in a car seat in my bathroom, and I was showering like a maniac, trying to do it before she would wake up.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I had delivered all these babies, no one taught me how, I could have asked, someone could have been there for me to hold this baby while I was showering. If you have other kids, come and take the other children out. That's the biggest gift, I think.
I want to talk really quickly about the mental health conditions that can develop from postpartum, and also what kind of steps and exercises people can take to maybe lower their anxiety or their risk to develop those.
I think, first of all, recognize the symptoms of it. If you have history of being treated for anxiety and depression, I want people to know that it's absolutely safe to take antidepressants while you're breastfeeding. A lot of patients think they can't take any medications. That's not true. I think at 2 weeks, if they feel well and if they're not in pain and their wound is healed, going for short walks, doing yoga, self-care is very, very important. Sometimes we get so involved with the baby that we forget ourselves. We're not sleeping well, we're not eating. So it's always good, even as a mom of a newborn, to take time for you. And there's nothing wrong with that.
One of the things about the 6 weeks that we definitely want to talk about was that 6 weeks it's also cleared for sex.
Yes.
And that seems like a number. Like, first of all, the body healing 6 weeks after a human comes out of it is absolutely incredible. But that doesn't necessarily mean your mind and your mentality is back. I mean, I just remember having PTSD, like, well, we might have another baby and we can't even handle this baby. So, I'm not getting into bed. Talk about why that number maybe isn't actually accurate for every woman out there.
So 6 weeks is when the wound heals, right? The problem is postpartum, with the hormone shift, with the crash of estrogen, we have a lot of vaginal dryness. I don't know if you experienced that, but it's extremely common. And even for patients who've had C-sections, when they first start having sex, the vagina feels very dry and it feels painful, even though they haven't pushed the baby out vaginally. So now you add vaginal birth to it with a tear that has been sutured up.
Yeah.
Everything's tight and it hurts. And I always say, if you want to start having sex early, then use lubrication and know that it's going to hurt. As long as you're breastfeeding, it takes months for your hormones to recover, for the tissue to recover. It's the emotional aspect of it too. It's the fatigue. It's the lack of sleep. it's the stress, it's the anxiety, it's the depression.
Yeah.
It's all of it that lowers our sex drive and the libido. So for partners listening to this, it's absolutely normal if your wife doesn't want to have sex immediately 6 weeks postpartum. I used to have these large clinics in downtown Los Angeles, and I used to do 80 deliveries a month when I first came out of residency. And I never forget, on a daily basis, I would write 5 to 6 prescriptions a day. At 6 weeks postpartum, the patient would ask me to write it. She is not allowed to have sex for another 6 months, for another 3 months, for another 5 weeks, because these patients would go home and their partners would force them to have sex with them. So they wanted a medical letter from me to show to them that they're not supposed to have sex, and I would give it to them.
Yeah,
of course I would.
Of course. And it's a very complicated thing too for maybe your partner to wrap their mind around, but they didn't go through what you just went through physically. You're the one having the baby. I want to talk about postpartum care here in the US versus the rest of the world. We do we do hear a lot of things that ours is lacking in that care. And as someone who went through all of this, I do feel like, as we're talking about this, postpartum was definitely not a discussion in any of my prenatal appointments. It was like, we're going to focus on this baby, you having this baby. And then after that, it was like,
you're on your own.
You're on your own. You just take her home. I remember taking her home in the car seat and being like,
what do I do now?
Are they coming with us? Like, is that nurse who was checking on me every hour? She's going to come back, right? And that's just 48 hours. And then you're on your own.
You're right. I think the worst part of our current system is that they expect moms to go back to work at 6 weeks. At 6 weeks, you're just healing physically. Forget about all the emotional stuff we talked about. So at 6 weeks, you have to go back to work. I think that's criminal. I think that number should be 6 months to a year paid leave for moms. And I think we need paid paternal leave for 6 weeks. So that's number one. Number two is, let's talk about lactation consultant. If you're lucky, you get a lactation consultant come to your room 1 day postpartum.
Yes, when you're frantic and confused and don't know what day it is.
Once you go home, that's done.
That's done.
So I think that needs to continue. I think a therapist is mandatory and it's a must. Imagine if you had access to a postpartum therapist that you could talk to that would explain to you that these symptoms are all normal and it's okay to feel this way and it's okay to feel detached, and that doesn't make you a bad mom. It's okay not to be able to breastfeed. If you're killing yourself and you're not getting milk out, it's okay. The other thing is, imagine if you had a pelvic floor therapist who would help you recover, who would help strengthen your bladder even past 6 weeks. We don't have any of that. None of that in this country.
I want to live in your postpartum world. It's just logical and it makes sense, and especially after you have a baby, realizing now you have to go back to work and you are maybe not healed fully from all of this, and you have such a small, tiny baby at home.
I remember with my first daughter, I took 3 weeks off. With my second daughter, I took 2.5 weeks off. With my third daughter, even though I had 3 C-sections, I was doing another C-section a week after my third daughter was born. When you deliver, they give you the mesh underwear.
Yeah, you were wearing that.
I was in the operating room getting ready for a C-section, and I bent down to fix the booties that I wear. I was pulling it up, and as I bent down, my mesh underwear showed. And the scrub tech looked at me. He's like, "Are those the mesh underwear from the hospital?" I'm like, yeah, I just delivered a week ago.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have done that, but I didn't have a choice because I didn't have any partners and I had a very busy practice, so I had to go back.
Yeah, and like you said, if you had the choice, and most women don't, and a lot of women don't have the choice and
didn't have a choice.
And need to go back to work. So if it's not given more than 6 weeks, you take your 6 weeks and you just, that's what you have to do. So if the policies were changed, obviously, to give more time, I think there'd be much better results when it comes to postpartum and everything.
Can you imagine if every mom had 6 months to a year to bond with their child? Can you even imagine that? That would be a beautiful world.
It would. An incredible conversation. Thank you for clearing up so much. And of course, for the people who don't have kids to, understand what's going on with women. It takes a village to raise a child, but also I feel like take care of the mother as well.
Yeah, I also, I want to make sure patients understand that the postpartum period is transitional, and with a lot of support and being informed about all the symptoms, it's not as bad. We all do it. We all go through it. And having a baby is truly a gift, and it's worth everything that comes with it.
Thank you so much for having this very informative conversation with us here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
That was an incredible conversation. And I think it's really important for all of us on all sides of it to have some kind of understanding and to have some kind of insight into the process. Because I know you said it's a if you know kind of club, but like we want to know too.
Years ago, nobody discussed postpartum. Nobody discussed what happens to you after you have a baby. And I think one thing that seems simple, but we're having the conversation, we're opening it up. Like as we looked in the last kind of press run for Jennifer Lawrence for her movie Die My Love, she talks so much about her postpartum experience with her second child, which a lot of people think, hey, you've already had one. Second's not going to be different than the first, but every birth you have is so different. But she's been very vocal about her anxiety that she's had. And I think just having that conversation, just being in a room with people and openly discussing that is way leaps and bounds from what we've had years ago, decades ago. Nobody talked about what happened to women after they had a baby.
Yeah, I think my mother would still argue that she is still postpartum. 36 years later.
I don't think you're ever not. I mean, once you have a baby.
No, she's still going through it. Sorry, Mom.
I mean, there's a great quote that I love so much from a Harvard professor, Jessica Cohen. She works for the T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and she honestly put it best. She says, women are left to fall off a cliff after delivery. And I know it sounds dramatic, but it really isn't, especially here in the U.S. She says the drop-off of medical attention for mothers is a pretty stark contrast to how often pregnant patients are seen for prenatal care. I was going, when I was at the end of my pregnancy, every week you had to go. Every week you had to have a stress test for your baby, a scan. It was just always, I was always at Cedars. And that's how it was. After, I had one appointment and they're like, you're good to go.
Just take that with you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's wild, and it's so stark in comparison to the care you get before having a baby. When we look at some of the numbers, though, and as you probably saw through experience and also through research, it looks like here, though, in the U.S., postpartum care is literally almost non-existent.
Which is interesting because as I consider, my future and if I should have a baby, where to have the baby, that's a big debate in my mind is whether I'd want to do that in the U.S.
When you look at postpartum care in the U.S., you talk about the Family Medical Leave Act, right? Where you're given 12 weeks of unpaid leave to take care of your child. 12 weeks, I mean, that is the standard there to have 12 weeks of unpaid leave. But when you think about that, that's only a 3-month-old baby.
Yeah.
And then you're just off into the world.
And then the baby is off into the world without you.
Yes. And there's certainly not enough time. And based on your company, maybe you'll get more paid time. But the average for that is about 6 weeks.
And that was recently established too. That's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So all the women having babies before that just was like, okay, thanks, bye.
Yes. And you think about, okay, I just like, especially if it's your first baby and you do not know what to expect, that's another load of stress on your mental health, in addition to the stress that you already have of taking care of a new child. So a lot of these postpartum things that we'll talk about when it's anxiety or the mental health aspect, it makes sense that these things could happen to women because we're not taking care of them after they have a baby.
Yeah. What was your experience like with Sloan? Who's a cutie pie, by the way.
Yes. Who is on the phone sleeping as we speak, so I know when she gets up.
She might cry in this episode, guys. Everybody say hi, Sloan.
When I had Sloan, I genuinely didn't know what to expect after. And, you're in this big delivery room. I had like a view of the Hollywood sign. My husband had a couch to sleep on. And the minute we had that child, they put us in like a 6x6 room and he was sleeping on a chair for 2 days. A lactation consultant comes in, helps you to latch. You don't know what's going on. A nurse is coming in every hour to check on you and make sure that all your vitals are correct. I had really high blood pressure. And then after that, you leave the hospital. They're like, put her in and then take her. And I'm thinking to myself, and then you're going to come check on me at my house? Or like, how is this going to work? Don't I need my vitals checked still? It's only been 48 hours.
Nope, you'll be fine.
So that whole hospital experience and to leave and just to be anxious about it is very jarring. And you get home, and a lot of times you do want to be home because, like, you know, the hospital's not the most comfortable place. But the adjusting that happens as the months go on is kind of a mystery. Like, I remember thinking postpartum only equaled depression. Like, if I'm feeling, and I remember monitoring myself, like, how do I feel? Am I depressed, or is this something, or am I just adjusting to a new life, a new person in my house, a new crying, not sleeping,
a new person in my house. I never thought of it like that. You feel a whole new person in your house.
In my house. So maybe that's what I'm adjusting to. You know, there's not a lot of answers you get for why you feel that way. Of course, you're going to be overwhelmed. Of course, these things are going to happen, but to the extreme that I have postpartum depression, you know, there's baby blues. It might be there, and it's actually is something you should talk to someone about. I even think baby blues and not feeling great, there's something you should talk to someone about as soon as you have a baby.
Yeah. Did you feel like yours was more on the side of baby blues, or did you feel like you were crossing over into postpartum depression?
It's so hard to tell what's even happening. And like, I think back to, I don't know, like they say women have more children because like they black out that part of like after you have them. I had really bad postpartum anxiety. I had really bad postpartum rage, which was like, even my husband breathing, I was like, murder. This is what's happening. Like, I would really implode, and it was really, really bad. It's really like hard for me to talk about too, because you're trying to do everything and you're trying to be a quote unquote good mom. And so there's a lot of shame that comes with like not appreciating your new baby that's at home, or like yearning for the life you had before, and like all these adjustments. I've learned to accept those things are perfectly natural.
Yeah.
And not a lot of things that people talk about. I know Jennifer Lawrence did very much talk about the anxiety. You think something bad's going to happen all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had that babysitting my niece, like, so I can't imagine if this was my actual child that came from my actual body, like I'd be freaking out. And you know, I think it's an adjustment too for some people that are like, for instance, I take one of my best friends, like she was a former party girl, like she came out of party girl into, I don't know, like, hey, shout out to the party girls, but she came out of party girl life into, you know, this new experience of motherhood, and had never felt any kind of sadness or depression or anything like that, to all of a sudden encounter it, and she just didn't know what it was. And you know, I think for some people too, that actually kind of deters them from even wanting to have more children, because they don't want to go through postpartum again.
100%. I have a history of depression, so I was like, I thought it was going to happen more to me, and luckily it wasn't terrible, and you could go to therapy and talk through it, but I just thought I would be some more inclined. So I was fearful the entire time I was pregnant that after I have this baby, it's going to be doom and gloom.
What was the biggest surprise for you in postpartum?
Okay, so I had this idea that when I got home, like I would be in bed, and like someone would bring me the baby, and like
who's bringing you the baby, Natalie?
I was like, got to rest. I had a C-section. I did not think I would be going up and down the stairs, having her on me most of the time. I have like a keloid scar now because it didn't heal properly because I always had the baby, and I was like, wait, when do I get to rest? Like that, those things never happen. I assumed that I would get to rest and then take care of said baby, but it's like you just power through, and whether you heal or not, great, good luck. I really thought there'd be more care for mom than there was, especially with doctors, and like hands down, my husband and my mom really took good care of me, but I was exhausted from having a baby. And so that part was like really surprising to me.
I think that's actually very uniquely American too, is you know, kind of not having that, you know, care from doctors and outside people.
Right.
Because I think that your fantasy of like, oh, I'm going to go home and I'm going to like have support and rest, I think actually that does happen.
I like
in
literally
some other places.
You don't sleep, and then you're supposed to know what to do and function, and you've never done it before. You can take all the classes in the world before you have your baby. Until they're there, you don't know what you're doing. What you're
going to feel like. The truth is, because again, you thought maybe you'd have depression, and you know, you managed to kind of circumvent that, and my friend
and have
thought,
something else,
right?
Anxiety.
Have anxiety instead. My friend thought, you know, she's a party girl, that would never happen to her. You know, she's always been happy, and then it hits you, so you don't actually know. Not only do you not know how you feel till you have the baby, but you don't know how you're going to respond in terms of your body, in terms of your mind, until it kind of happens, which is why I think we need the information to be prepared as possible, obviously.
I think so. I think if you are not affected by it, girl, good for you. This is like a great life to be living. But for the majority of us, postpartum is a bitch. So when we talk about postpartum around the world, the things that we kind of lack here in the US, when you talk about the Netherlands, it's a great example. They have government subsidized care assistance, like basically a domestic helper in the house that comes back with you to your home to help you learn. They visit for 4 to 6 hours, and they're there for up to 8 days after you have the baby. So having someone,
a baby. So with a baby, that sounds fantastic.
Because here in the US, we're paying for night nurses if that's the kind of care we want, and that ain't cheap.
Yeah.
So in many European countries, you'll get more care that looks kind of like the Netherlands. You'll have home visits. That becomes the standard. Like I was lucky enough to get a Zoom with a lactation consultant. Someone coming to your house.
Zoom?
Yeah. Which is really hard to do with a breastfeeding baby.
I was about to say,
moving this way,
have
moving
the,
that
yeah,
way.
like that's weird.
Possible. Thank God for my mother who was there to help me through that. But the UK, Japan, Australia, they all have some sort of standard care, which is someone at your house or coming to visit you where you're now going to have this baby. And I know you spoke to friends who live in different places outside of the US who had very, very different
from what
experiences.
A lot of my American friends say, and from just even your experience. And I'll start with England, because that is one of the places that one of my friends had a kid. And so she said in England, maternity care is generally free for residents through their national health service system. So I looked at that. And it really is, because I was like, what's the catch? There really isn't a catch.
I know.
And so she said,
We're so jaded.
I know. I was like, what's the catch?
Like, how much tax do I have to pay for that?
Right? Like, do I have to tip anybody
Yeah.
on that? But she said, I was lucky enough to not experience postpartum depression. And she said she wasn't sure if that was because she was on all of her vitamins and trying to take care of herself, or if it was because she has they have a very strong midwife community that checks on them. She said it was amazing to leave the hospital without any bills, and it really helped in giving her a good start. And then she said that within the first 2 weeks, she had a lactation consultant to help her with breastfeeding latches. They had recommendations, and they just helped her into a daily routine. And then after those first 2 weeks, she received health visitor checks every couple of weeks.
Wow.
So they came in and they were just like, you okay, honey? Like, which I think is fantastic. And then I have another friend who, my home country is Jamaica. So she gave birth in Jamaica. This is actually one of my very best friends. And she said that postpartum care there was good. Her doctor ensured that everything was good with her before they stopped those weekly checkups. And by the way, I should say that all of these women that I spoke to, none of them downplay that this was still a hard period. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because that's the whole point, is that it's a hard period, but it's harder if you don't have support and help. So of course she said, it was hard as hell. She said it was hard as hell. Her mom was there for the first 2 weeks, but it's your baby. So, mom can only do but so much. Mom can't breastfeed for you if you're choosing to breastfeed or if you're able to breastfeed. But she said that the nanny took a lot of stress off of her, and it's not as expensive in a lot of countries to get, someone to come in and help. And it's usually like an older lady to come in and give you time to go shower and do all of the things. So, she said her doc was also amazing with postpartum care. She said she could have gone to the physiotherapist, but she didn't even bother because she felt fine, so she had that option as well. And then she had a lactation specialist as well come over to do that. So I'm hearing that the lactation specialist is a nice perk.
I will say, if you don't have kids, just know, and the moms out there know, a shower postpartum is basically like a 3-day vacation in your brain. If you get to go take a shower, if someone watches your baby while you get to go shower, it is like the most amazing thing. I would literally have to ask my mom, did I shower today? And she's like, go, because you're just in this daze of not knowing anything. And it's like to get in there and be like, I'm by myself. I have a moment and I can just be here is huge. So I know it's just something that was in the notes, but it is a big deal to be able to
go take a
shower. I know it
shower.
sounds crazy, but
and even get fed, because I know one of the hospitals in Jamaica that a lot of my friends have had their kids at, there's a Domino's right next door. So I was going to visit a friend who had just had a baby, and she's just like, can you pop over to Domino's? And she literally ate an entire pizza in front of me. 5 hours after having a baby. And I was like, are you supposed to be doing that?
I definitely
she was like,
had a cold cut sandwich because you're not allowed to.
I didn't even know that. These are things you just don't know. I want to eat my Domino's in bed. Anyways. So I had another friend from Barbados, And she said, and this is the first sentence was, it's the most isolating shit. That's what she said. She said, and childcare in her country is actually expensive. She said, you're just juggling. She said, the doctor care, however, is very good. All the OBGYNs are very good at recommending psychological care when they see the triggers. Daycares from the government and private start at 3 months. And there's a new push for paternity leave, which, you know, that is also helpful to a postpartum mom if your partner is able to get paternity leave. And she said, because of the shift of work in tourism, many fathers are actually able to take the load for the day for the kid. So the fathers are able to step in and help. And then she said, because Barbados is small, there's a large multi-generational household, usually headed by the grandmother. And so you end up paying for childcare later on, higher up the social ladder, but you have this community where like in a lot of the Caribbean countries, especially, like you live with or near enough to your parents. So I remember like even when my mom had my brother, I was with my grandmother for like a good 2 weeks. Like, you know what I mean? Like primarily like, yeah, I went home, but like, you know, she's the one that took me to school and did all of that. And I think, you know, one of the things here in the US is that we're a little bit more fragmented. We're not close to our families. Like I don't have, like my stepsister lives here in LA, but I wouldn't have anybody else. Like my mom would have to fly in or, you know, so I think that's also a thing for a lot of people here when it comes to community is not having that.
I moved 3,000 miles to have my child next to my parents.
Which makes sense. I literally will plan my child on my mom's schedule so that she's like off work. She's like a professor. So when she's like off for the summer, I'm like, hey, I got another job for you.
Yeah, no.
Postpartum part 2.
I think one of the things too that we talk about is, and you see it there, that there was a lot of help for the mental load when it comes to having a kid. Here in the US, you go to your appointment and they give you this survey where you kind of fill out like 1 through 10 not depressed, 10 the most depressed. And I think there's this stigma that if you go past 5, that you're not happy you had a baby.
Yeah.
Do you know you're supposed
or
to?
That
This
they're
is
going to
supposed
try
to
to
be
take your baby. Is
the
what
most,
I would think.
Yeah, this is supposed to be the most joyous part of your life, and that's what we're fed as women. Like you should be so happy you have a healthy baby, and like that is true. But if you're on the other side of that, you shouldn't be ashamed. And it doesn't mean you don't love your child. It doesn't mean you're not a good mom. Things are happening. Hormones are going. Things in your brain, and a lot of women, I think, might go down 1 just because there's this stigma that, oh, well, I should be happy. This is what I wanted. And I think there needs to be another way to survey women about how they're feeling. And Dr. A also, and some other doctors that I listened to in a podcast, talked about asking the partner, asking the person in the house to answer that survey for you. Because you could just, there's a lot of things. Like the same question was like, how many drinks do you have a week when you're at the doctor? And you're like, oh, like you could lie your way through a lot of things at the doctor. You could fib. And so in this case, it's very, very important that you be honest. And like you said, like that was not a fear of mine, but for fear of other women that they might take your child away.
Yeah,
it's very
that's immediately
valid.
what I would think of is that, and especially as a Black woman, is that if I don't show that I'm extra happy to have this kid, that someone's going to say, well, you are not taking good care of your kid, or, you know, so I think that's a big fear for me, and I think for a lot of women. Yeah.
I think as we kind of have this conversation, it's so interesting to hear your perspective and your friends from other countries, and I'm a little jealous of how well they were taken care of.
I will say everybody's babies are really cute, so congratulations to everybody. Nobody has had an unsightly child yet.
Oh my gosh. They're always cute in the mom's eyes, trust me. I look back at pictures of my child and go, what? Why did we think that she was adorable? You're just like rose-colored glasses the whole time.
And it's so funny because you also, you know, you have also gone through 9 months of actually carrying the child. Yes. You're on the tail end of like, so giving birth itself, we've talked about as being this monumental feat, but you're also coming off of 9-10 months of also monumental feating.
Yeah, and
important
for postpartum is those 9 and 10 months you're being juiced with hormones that are then depleted as soon as you have that child. Yeah, so some takeaways here from this episode, especially with our conversation with the doctor. There is good news according to postpartumdepression.org. Recovery is definitely possible. This is not a permanent thing that you're going to have forever. With the right treatment, the right support, so they say up to 80% of individuals with postpartum depression recover, fully make a recovery. This is like you said, a monumentous moment in your life, but it's not going to last forever. The other thing that we must talk about is some sort of policy change when it comes to the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Expanded paid family leave and guaranteed postpartum care. Those are the two things that women most need right now.
Yeah. And then I was thinking too about just the fact that, part of this is also the community. You know what I mean? So part of this is, yes, we need definitely, some kind of like federal change, but also just even as single women or women who do not have children, I think there is this misunderstanding between, the communities. And I think there are ways that we can remedy that from both sides. And I think, postpartum friendships are very important. I know a lot of women, feel like they lose a lot of friends once they have a baby. And, that can be for several reasons. And so I was just kind of like researching some suggestions like from around the internet on how, child-free friends or women without children can support their friends. And one of the things I saw was don't ask like how I can help, just offer something specific. I will never, personally, without a kid, I will never be mad if something's going on with me and you show up with food. Like I'll never be mad.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things.
I think this is a great point too, that this is why postpartum affects everyone. A mom, a woman, someone has children, and the way to support, like every time I have a friend and now they're banging out these kids left and right. Ooh. All my friends have kids and they're always having babies. Fun. And every single time I send $100 Uber Eats gift card to the partner.
Yeah.
And I sent it the last week to one of my friends. I sent it to her husband, and he was like, "Oh my God, thanks so much." I'm like, "No one's trying to cook right now.
No one's trying to cook.
Just order the food. It is paid for. Get it to the house. Feed her. Let her sleep. It's right there on your phone." And it's the only thing that I feel like I can do besides for like going to hold your child, because I love to hold babies. But I might not be invited to your house immediately after birth to hold your baby.
And then one of the other things I saw too is normalize canceled plans, because I know we're in a world right now where it's frustrating for, we are so limited in I think physical connection anyways, that it sometimes gets frustrating. I know there's like the school of people that are like happy when plans get canceled, but I think sometimes
I'm the principal of that
the principal of like plans getting canceled. Oh my gosh. But I think people get kind of annoyed when your friends cancel plans. And so I think normalize that and realize that like just because they were feeling great yesterday and up for it yesterday, today is a completely different day. That baby could be colicking or whatever is happening to y'all over there. Colicking.
We'll get you there.
Whatever y'all are doing over there.
We'll get you the germs.
Also avoiding minimizing postpartum struggles with optimism. So like, and I try to practice this across my life too, but just telling people like, you're going to be fine. Like it's going to be okay. Like nobody wants to hear that when they're down in the dumps, I think. Yeah. And when, their baby has been crying for 19 hours straight. Cause I know the lady across the way had a baby and I was like, sis, if I can hear and I'm feeling this way, I cannot imagine how you can feel. So just not to minimize, and then validate their exhaustion without comparison. You know what I mean? Because I think on both sides, we tend to do that. Well, I'm more tired than you because I have a kid. Well, I'm more tired than you because I work 19 hours a day and then come home and still have to work, 19 hours. I think we tend to do that. I've seen a lot of that on the internet lately, and I don't like it because everybody needs to realize that everybody's time looks different and is valuable. Yeah. And then on the kind of other side of the spectrum, for postpartum moms on how they can navigate friendships, because this is a whole new world that you also have to, navigate. It's like now you're the friend with a kid where all your friends might not have kids, or now you've joined the land of, you're with the friends that have kids and you're in the mom club, and then you have your friend over there that you still really love. And so one of the things I saw for that is just acknowledging that their lives still matter, and, not thinking to yourself, like, remembering that they still have things going on. Not 10, 11, 12 months ago, you guys were in the paint together. So realizing that their journey might not have changed as much. And then don't assume that availability equals capacity. Because I think that's something that we do a lot on both ends, is that because someone is available, like even you as a mom, like, oh, well, your kid is at their grandmother's for the weekend, so you must have time to hang out with me, right? No. You just want
time to sleep.
You just want to sit in the closet and just like put the blanket over your head. And then there's the other way around too, is just because I don't have something to do doesn't mean that I necessarily want to come and, help you do something or whatever. So I think
we all just need to modify our expectations.
Exactly.
About what maybe our friendship looked before a kid and what it looks afterwards. I know one thing that, like, as a personal thing, is like they can if someone's just recently had a baby, they can text you back whenever they want. Yeah. Don't expect immediate responses from someone who's just had a baby, and don't be offended. In the other half, if you finally have time at 2 a.m. and you're like, Rae didn't text me back. Well, yeah, Rae asleep.
Well, actually, my favorite thing was, because I'm here in California, we're 3 hours behind Jamaica, 4 hours behind other countries that I have friends in. And so they would be up with their babies at like whatever o'clock in the morning, and I would still be awake. And that was like, they were lonely. They're
I texted
like, I'm
a
here
lot
with this
of
kid.
people on my old morning show when I had a baby. They're like, why are you up?
Yeah, you're here breastfeeding your baby and like, you don't have anything else. Like, you're like catching up. I'm like, what's new? Like, nothing.
Yeah.
Just got this baby on my boob.
It is what it is, and that's when you have the time.
Yeah. And then I think one of the things too is also recognizing that hormonal and fertility and IVF journeys may also be invisible. And so sometimes that's a reason why other people aren't as keen to, you know, kind of jump in and celebrate you, because everybody has their individual journey. So I think those mutual ground rules are just like no guilt-based comparisons, checking in, you know, as you said, giving permission to evolve on both ends of the spectrum of those friendships.
Just give each other grace about this, because it'll all settle. It really does. You get back. I mean, I have a group of mom friends, and it takes us 6 to 12 weeks to make the plan to meet in another 6 to 12 weeks.
Yes.
And everyone's cool with it. Like, look forward to July. And that's it. And then you're like, that's life just gets a little more complicated and a little harder. But it's you. If you have good friends, then it shouldn't matter. And if you have bad friends, then you should be happy you had a baby and you don't have them anymore.
No, you don't have them. You get new friends.
Yeah.
I know my best friend just dropped her kid off the other day, and she's 4, so it's not. We're still. I would still say she's in a postpartum era, but it's a 4-year, and she just dropped off her kid and was like, "Here, have this."
Yeah.
And I was like, and I was with that babe she's my goddaughter. I was with my goddaughter for maybe like 7 hours, and I was like, no, how do you do this?
That's just
and I was like,
Tuesday.
does she keep talking? Yes, she keeps talking. So, you know, I think that also gives true as well, is when you're able to spend time with people's kids when you're able to see
that's true.
a dose of what that experience might be like, helpful for you to understand the mother as well.
All right, you guys, thank you for joining us this week on Broadlines. We had a really long and great conversation about postpartum, how it affects everyone. Like I said earlier, you know a mom, you know a woman, you know someone who might be going through this. So it's important that you, Rae, really well touched on this part, that it's about a community.
It's about a community. And even if you're on the side of the spectrum where you don't yet have a kid, or you don't even want a kid, it's also important for you to understand what postpartum moms go through, what that looks like, and how you can support your friends and the people in your lives that matter to you that may be going through postpartum, or, you know, thinking about going through having a baby.
Amen. Make sure you tune into our episode next Tuesday. Also, in the meantime, if you just need more content, make sure you sign up for the newsletter.